Alright, good day everyone. Steve Briggs here. So today's video will be based on setting up an IP address on a switch and also setting up SSH on that switch. In order to do the SSH, you must have an IP address on that switch. So the first thing I'll do, I'll set up the IP address and I'll explain while I'm going through. So configure, that shorthand is configure terminal. What do? You create a VLAN. But before I go into that, I'm going to show you something here. The shortening configuration. The switch as it is in its default state. You see we have interface VLAN. This doesn't have an IP address. Now if we assign an IP address, what will happen is that each and every port here will be able to be accessed via that IP address, and you wouldn't want that on a switch. Here we have the console line. We will configure that also for security reasons. You deal with the line VTY 0 to 4 telnet, and then you have the SSH. Now when you enable SSH on a switch and even on routers, what it does, it disables telnet. Telnet is a way to connect to a switch or even other devices remotely, but the thing with that is that the information is not encrypted. So you on a network, you going through all these little hop counts, meaning routers, and somebody, for some hacker, maybe hacked or maybe sitting on a network there on a computer sniffing packets, and then he realized that this packet, the information isn't encrypted. So therefore he takes this information, recompile it, and when he looks, he realizes that is a password and username for the switch that you are trying to get into, because it has the destination address and the source address and all this other information. And with that, now he can get into that switch, change VLANs, and bring down your entire network. So to avoid that, use SSH. So what we will do now, we'll go into privilege, we're going to configuration mode. So you use configure terminal. We create first thing we do, we create a VLAN. We'll name this one, we'll create a VLAN 5. You could name it or you can leave it without a name. The switch will by default give it a name, but I will name mine SSH connection, and we are finished with this part here. Now what we are going to do, we are going to assign a specific port to that VLAN, and the port that we will be assigning to that VLAN will be fast Ethernet 0/1, because that is the port where this computer is currently connected to. So we go switch port, mode, access, I see the problem. You have to go interface, fast Ethernet 0/1. My bad, that was a mistake there. Switch port, mode, access, switch port, access, VLAN 5. So we will end and we will show that now. Show VLAN. So we can see that the VLAN 5 is up, and we assign the fast Ethernet 01 to it. Now this is the part where we are going to put the IP address. You say interface VLAN 5, and the interface will come up. So we are assigning that the IP address to the specific VLAN. So if you had another port here, those two ports that are assigned to that VLAN, when you finish setup SSH, you will be able to access it via those ports. IP address, and use 192.168.1.1.255.255.255.0. The subnet mask in a slash notation, that will be /24, and that's it there. We say no shutdown. What we do now, so we have an IP address on the switch. So if you do show running configurations, you will see that we have switch port, mode, access, VLAN 5. Scroll through and you will see that the interface VLAN 5, we have assigned the IP address. So we are going to do the configurations here now. The first thing we do, we put in the command enable secret. Now what enable secret does, it puts a password for the privilege mode. So you can put enable password, but what happens is that when you do a show running configuration, you will actually see the password. But you can, if you use enable password and you put 12345, what you can do afterwards, you can use service password encryption to encrypt the password here. But to save all the headache, you can just do enable secret 12345. So I will take off the password 12345. And then I will do enable secret, and I will put my secret now. Right, so that is the first step to that there now. With this here now, we have, as I said, we set up the password for the privilege mode. The next thing we have to do when we're doing the SSH, you have to put in a domain, the domain name. So I will name mine site5.com. From here you have to change the host name of the switch. So I name mine SW1, and then you put in the crypto key generate RSA, the number of bits, how many bits for the modules, we use 1024. Then we are going to enable the SSH, IP SSH version 2, and that has been enabled. What you do now this part here is two parts to it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the username password. So when I'm going to SSH into the switch, this username and password that I place here is what I will need to get into the switch. So I'll use username Steve, password, or you can put this secret. So instead of putting password and have the password in plain text, you use secret. And the secret I will use here, I will use 12345. Make it simple, just for demonstration purposes. Now I go to line VTY 0 to 15, transport, input, SSH, and this is the part I was saying earlier on in terms of username and password. If I use login, when I enter this command, I will have to put in a password also after that. But if I use login local, what will happen is that when I'm logging in, you will require this username and password. Whichever username and password you have here is what will be required. Now you can have multiple username and passwords for different persons, but it is recommended that you have the minimum, the least you have, it will be much more secure. Because I mean, you wouldn't want to have 10 different persons going into that switch. Okay, so we use the login local, and then we are finished here. We exit. I'm going to configure now the console line. So we do line console 0, password. I will name this one Cisco. Login. Okay, so basically that is it there. Okay, exit. So what I do now, I go to the computer here and I assign a static IP address. If I use that, it's going to have an error here because that address has already been assigned to the port on the switch. So the 168.1.1 will actually be the gateway for connectivity. Oh, we're actually in already. Okay, so we have closed the connection. Maybe that was from some work I was doing earlier on. Yeah. So what I will do now, I'll do a ping 192.168.1.1. So you can see that we're actually connecting to the switch and the PC. We have that connectivity. So what I do now, how do you SSH into a switch? SSH into a switch via packet tracer is a little more different than in the real life scenario. In the real life scenario, I'll bring up PuTTY. And what PuTTY does is that you have the option here. You have SSH, you have telnet, serial. Serial is when you're actually using the console cables. So when you connect the console cable, you put the whatever the COM port, maybe 3 or 4. But with SSH, you put either the host name or the IP address, and then you click open, and the session goes in. Packet Tracer does it a little different. So you do SSH-L for login, and you remember the name that we placed here earlier on, which was, let me find it here, username Steve. That will be the username that you will have to use to get into the switch. So that username here, which is the Steve here, is what you will be putting here. Whatever you put here, Steve, and then you put the IP address of that switch, and you see the session is open. Now the session is open. You have to put in the password now, the secret 12345, and we are in here now. So Steve was the username, and the password you had that assigned here, the secret, which was 12345. You're in now. Now the part where I was saying now, where we had the enable secret, this is the part now where we are getting into the privilege mode of the switch. So if you type enable, you see they're telling you already you have to put in the password, and therefore the password that we'll be putting in here is test12345. That's the password that we'll be using to access the switch. And you can actually see all the configurations via the PC, also on the switch. So as we make changes via the PC, you will see it on the switch. So if we do show running configurations and we go down, we'll actually go through. Let me just scroll back up here. The username Steve secret, you see the encryption is an MD5 hash encryption. Scroll along again, you see the VLAN, the line console, the password is encrypted and it's logged. So if I place login local, I would have to use this here to get in, but I use login, so therefore I will be using the password that I placed here. So as you can see, login local, transport, input SSH. So SSH is enabled for both the telnet and the SSH itself. So what I'll do now, I will demonstrate it via the console cable. So I'll get another PC. This is the console here. You're connecting it to the RS323, and then you're going to console on the switch. So on this PC, you come here, terminal, and you click open. You'll actually see everything that is happening on the switch on this console here. So if I make any changes, you will see it on the SSH also, because we have one connection via the SSH on the port on the switch, and then we have one connection via the console. So I will exit, and then I'll enable. So they'll ask me what is the password to get in here. The password that we had before, which we used for the console, was Cisco. So I will type in that there, and you see we actually got in because that was the password for the console. Now if I try to use the password that we were using for the SSH, which is 12345, I would not get in because we are not SSHing into the switch. We are going via the console, so you assign a different password for the different types of connections. So we had Cisco, and we are in the privilege mode here now, and remember the password that we put here was test12345. oh my bad, Alright, I forgot to put the word enable. So how I cancel this translation thing here, just pull down Control Shift and 6 on the keyboard. So I type enable, they will ask for the password. The password will be test 12345 and we are in. And from here we can actually do all our changes and set up VLANs and stuff. So folks, I hope this video was informative, and if you have any problems, leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching everyone. Enjoy your day.